Very good morning to distinguished speakers and guests. My name is Masaki Takahara, Managing Director of Jetro Sydney office. Today, I am honored to be invited to talk about economies and the market outlook of Australia and New Zealand. The previous speakers might have discussed already the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, also known as CPTPP or TPP-11, entered into force at the end of 2018. It was reported that UK is newly applying to join the group, and the US, which once withdrew before the enforcement, is now expected to be back under new administration. This is the chart showing for which country CPTPP is the first EPA among the group. For Mexico, it was the first time to have 6 trade partners, includes Australia and New Zealand. For Australia and New Zealand, it was the first time to have EPA with Canada, Peru, and respectively Mexico. If I am allowed to touch on CPTPP overview, after the US withdrawal from TPP, 11 countries affirmed the economic and strategic importance of the TPP and agreed to launch a process to build a new economic partnership in order to sustain and develop the high-level standards of the original TPP agreement. By utilizing this EPA, Australia and New Zealand are expected to extend trade and investment relationship with partner countries like Mexico. Australia is usually regarded as a country only with mineral resources. New Zealand may be regarded as only with agriculture. But taking this opportunity, I would like to encourage participants to change stereotype image of economy of Australia and New Zealand. When we take a look at trade statistics, we find that about 70% of exports consists of mineral resources and agricultural products, and it cannot be helped to have certain kind of impression on Australian economy. Australia is actually the giant exporter of coal, natural gas, and iron ore, and imports manufactured goods, includes passenger cars and computers. China has become the biggest trade partner of Australia. In exports, China, Japan, and Korea take share of nearly 60%. In imports, China and US take share of more than a third. More than half of New Zealand exports consists of dairy products, meats, and woods. New Zealand imports machinery, passenger cars, and mineral fuels. The biggest trade partner of New Zealand is China, followed by Australia, United States, and Japan. These trading figures actually give you the impression both economies of Australia and New Zealand heavily depend on natural resources, quite like some other developing economies. But taking a look at the composite of Australian GDP, you will see 76% of GDP consists of service sector, and this higher portion of service sector among GDP is the same level as other advanced economies like United States and Japan. Significantly, more than 80% of workers are engaged in service sector in Australia. The share of manufacturing sector in GDP actually shrunk from 13.4% in 1975 to 5.7% in 2018. Because of high cost of human resources and dispersed population to many cities in the continent, manufacturing has become not to suit to the Australian economy. So, for instance, Ford, Toyota, and GM Holden withdrew manufacturing bases. Since then, Australian market completely depends on imported cars. Population of Australia and New Zealand is not large and about 4 times less than Mexico, even 2 countries combined. Australian population is dispersed to multiple major cities in the continent, and this impedes effective logistics of manufacturing. New Zealand has nearly the same GDP composite of Australia. Service sector shows advanced growth to reach 67%. Australia had enjoyed continuous economic growth for more than 28 years from 1991 to 2019. This is the longest economic growth without recession among developed economies. But due to corona pandemic, Australia experienced minus growth in first and second quarter of 2020 and technically got into recession. Australian economy strongly bounced back in the third quarter of 2020 and expected to be back on track again thanks to government's effective management of corona pandemic. This economic growth was brought by not only export of mineral resources, but strong domestic demands led by growing service sector, particularly financial service, healthcare, and educational services. Australia's total GDP is about 10% more than Mexico's, but Australia's size of population is 5 times less than Mexico. So Australians are 5 times richer than Mexican and 40% richer than Japanese in terms of GDP per capita. According to IMF, Australian GDP per capita is ranked in the 10th place in the world, and New Zealand is placed in 25th place. Wages of workers of both Australia and New Zealand is very high, and consumers have strong buying power with a very low saving rate of just 2% in Australia. One of the key drivers of strong economic growth is immigrants. Population is growing 1 million in every 3 years. More than 70% of immigrants settled in major cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Population growth triggers demands for domestic infrastructure for expansion of cities, includes housing, roads, and public transportation, and Australian government responds to these demands by aggressive allocation of budget. Australian population would reach as large as 48.3 million in 2066, according to the most aggressive forecast by the government. Foreign direct investment used to be made into manufacturing and mineral resources sector in Australia. But nowadays, more FDI are made into service and real estate, which reflects vast domestic demands. I'd like all the participants not to regard Australia as a country of just mineral resources, but a country with developed and growing service sector, with significantly high GDP per capita, and with growing domestic demands triggered by strong population growth by immigrants. New Zealand has the same FDI trend as Australia, and more than a third of FDI are made into financial and insurance services, reflecting domestic demands. This slide shows the trade and investment relationship between Mexico, Australia, and New Zealand. Figures between Mexico and both Australia and New Zealand is not high. Australia imports telecom equipment and parts, passenger motor vehicles, medical instruments, and computers from Mexico. New Zealand imports electric machinery and parts, medical devices, beverages, and spirits from Mexico. Regarding to investment relationship, Mexico made no FDI to both Australia and New Zealand in 2019. I can say trade and investment relationship between Mexico and both Australia and New Zealand is not active enough yet. I'd like to talk about business opportunities. Australia used to import auto parts from Mexico, but it stopped after all the auto manufacturers withdrew from Australian market in 2017, as I previously explained. It is reported that Australia imports about 10,000 Mexican-built vehicles a year. Imports of Mexican vehicles are expected to grow, taking advantage of tariff reduction by CPTPP, but it should be noted that the market is not large and consumers have a strong loyalty for Japanese brands. New Zealand enjoys Japanese brands as well. As an FDI market, Australia's country risk is low and law enforcement are very transparent. Australians are rich in income and consumption is active. So service sector include retail and food services is promising for even SMEs as long as high quality services are provided. But the cost of human resources is so high and the rent of commercial district is stable even after corona pandemic. Australia is traditionally quite open for FDI and basically welcome foreign acquisition and takeover. There is an opportunity to own Australian top-tier companies. Japanese companies enjoy FDI into Australian market basically by M&A and ranked in the third place in accumulated amount of investment following US and UK. I am sure that Mexican companies are welcomed the same as other countries like Japan. Thank you very much for listening.